Toxic people thrive on reaction. They study your anger, feed on your insecurity, and look for the exact emotional button that will make you lose control. The moment you react predictably, you give them power. The intelligent response is not always to fight harder. Sometimes the most powerful move is to become impossible to manipulate. Here are 6 key ideas behind 10 smart responses that can instantly disarm toxic people. Toxic people rarely begin with open warfare. Their methods are usually more subtle. A careless insult, a sarcastic comment, a dismissive laugh, or a statement designed to make you question yourself can be enough to trigger an emotional reaction. They understand a simple principle of human behavior. Whoever controls your emotions can often influence your decisions. The first smart response is therefore not an attack, not a defense, and not an explanation. It is calm acknowledgement. When someone says something deliberately provocative, answer with quiet confidence. I understand that's how you see it. These words may appear simple, but psychologically, they remove the weapon from the other person's hand. Most toxic individuals are prepared for resistance. They expect you to argue, justify yourself, become angry, or desperately try to change their opinion. Each reaction gives them more material to use against you. If you become defensive, they know they have found an insecurity. If you become furious, they know they can control your emotional state. If you begin explaining yourself, they know you are seeking their approval. But when you calmly acknowledge their perspective without accepting it as truth, you become much more difficult to manipulate. You are not saying they are right. You are simply refusing to enter the courtroom they have created. You are not the defendant, and they are not the judge. Their opinion belongs to them. Your identity belongs to you. This distinction is where emotional power begins. A person who needs universal approval can be controlled by anyone willing to withdraw it. A person who knows their own value can listen to criticism without immediately surrendering their peace. The toxic person may push harder. They may repeat the insult, raise their voice, or attempt to provoke a stronger reaction. This is the moment when discipline becomes essential. Do not mistake emotional restraint for weakness. Anyone can react in anger. Anyone can shout when their pride is touched. The more difficult skill is remaining composed when someone is deliberately trying to disturb your mind. Calmness is not passivity, it is control. When you answer, "I understand that's how you see it," you send an unspoken message. You do not have authority over my inner world. You may speak, criticize, judge, or attempt to provoke me, but I decide what enters my mind and what remains outside it. This creates a psychological boundary without creating unnecessary drama. The most dangerous thing you can give a toxic person is a predictable reaction. Once they know exactly which words make you angry, jealous, afraid, or defensive, they can press those buttons whenever they want. Become less predictable. Pause before responding. Choose your words carefully. Never allow someone else's emotional chaos to become the commander of your behavior. The person who controls their reaction keeps their power. Disrespect is often a test. A toxic person may insult you openly, mock your ideas, question your abilities, or make a humiliating comment in front of others. Their goal is not always to express an honest opinion. Sometimes they are studying your reaction. They want to discover how easily they can disturb your emotional balance. The moment you explode, they have succeeded in pulling you into their game. This is why one of the smartest responses to unnecessary disrespect is a calm and controlled statement. You're entitled to your opinion. These words do not mean you agree with them. They mean you refuse to surrender your peace to someone else's judgment. Most people feel an immediate urge to defend themselves when they are attacked. They want to prove the other person wrong, explain the truth, or return the insult with something even sharper. But a toxic person often wants exactly this. An argument gives them attention. Your anger gives them energy. Your desperate attempt to gain their approval gives them a position of authority they may not deserve. By responding calmly, you deny them the emotional reward they were seeking. There is a difference between accepting someone's opinion and accepting their definition of you. Anyone can form an opinion. That does not make it accurate. A person may misunderstand you, dislike you, envy you, or project their own frustrations onto your life. Their judgment may reveal more about their state of mind than about your character. The wise person learns to separate information from poison. Useful criticism can be examined. Cruelty can be rejected. You do not have to swallow every word someone throws at you simply because it was spoken with confidence. Saying, "You're entitled to your opinion," creates emotional distance. It tells the other person that their words have reached your ears but have not entered your identity. You heard them, but you are not owned by them. This is especially powerful because toxic people often depend on emotional access. They need you to feel offended, insecure, ashamed, or desperate. When you refuse to provide those emotions on command, their influence begins to weaken. However, calmness should never mean accepting repeated abuse. If disrespect becomes a pattern, words must eventually be followed by boundaries. You can remain composed while limiting contact. You can refuse to argue while refusing access. You can protect your dignity without creating a dramatic performance. True strength is not proving that you can win every verbal battle. It is recognizing which battles are designed to waste your time and choosing not to participate. Remember that your reaction teaches people how much access they have to your emotions. Every time you respond with discipline instead of impulse, you become harder to provoke. Every time you refuse to chase validation from someone committed to misunderstanding you, you strengthen your independence. The person who needs to insult you to feel powerful is already revealing their weakness. Your task is not to defeat them with louder words. Your task is to remain in control of yourself, because self-command is the foundation of real power. One of the most common weapons used by toxic people is blame. When something goes wrong, they search for someone else to carry the weight of their mistakes. They may twist events, exaggerate your role, ignore their own behavior, and slowly make you feel responsible for problems you did not create. If you are naturally kind, empathetic, or eager to keep the peace, you may begin accepting blame simply to end the conflict. But peace built on false guilt is not real peace. It is surrender. A smarter response is to say, "I'll take responsibility for my part, but not for everything." These words create a boundary between accountability and manipulation. Taking responsibility for your mistakes is a sign of strength. Nobody is perfect, and denying every fault can make you just as difficult as the person accusing you. The goal is not to escape responsibility. The goal is to see reality clearly. Ask yourself what truly belongs to you. If you made a mistake, admit it. If your actions caused harm, acknowledge it and correct what you can. But do not carry another person's choices, emotions, or failures simply because they refuse to carry them themselves. Toxic people often use confusion to increase control. They may say, "If you really cared, you wouldn't have made me feel this way," even when their emotions were caused by unrealistic expectations. They may bring up old arguments, combine several unrelated issues, or change the story until you no longer know what you are defending. This is why emotional clarity is essential. Slow the conversation down. Do not accept every accusation immediately. Look at the facts. Separate what happened from how someone is presenting it. When you say, "I'll take responsibility for my part, but not for everything," you refuse both extremes. You are not pretending to be innocent in every situation, but you are also refusing to become the permanent villain in someone else's story. This balance is difficult because toxic people prefer simple roles. They want themselves to be completely right and you to be completely wrong. Reality is usually more complicated. Mature people can recognize shared responsibility. Manipulative people often cannot. You must also understand that another person's anger does not automatically prove your guilt. Someone can be loud and still be wrong. Someone can cry and still be manipulating you. Someone can repeat an accusation many times without making it true. Emotional intensity is not evidence. The more strongly a toxic person demands that you accept blame, the more carefully you should examine the situation before agreeing. Do not apologize merely because silence makes you uncomfortable. Do not say sorry for having a boundary, a different opinion, or a decision someone dislikes. An apology should repair a genuine mistake, not purchase temporary peace from an unreasonable person. If you constantly accept blame that does not belong to you, you teach others that guilt is an effective way to control you. The disciplined person does not run from responsibility, but neither do they become a container for everyone else's failures. They own what is theirs, correct what they can, and release what does not belong to them. Once you develop this habit, blame loses much of its power over you. You become more difficult to confuse, more difficult to guilt, and far more difficult to control. Toxic people often create drama because drama gives them control. A peaceful conversation allows both people to think clearly, examine the facts, and make rational decisions. Chaos changes the situation. When voices rise, accusations multiply, and emotions become intense, the person who can remain calm usually sees more clearly than the person trapped inside the storm. This is why one of the smartest responses to toxic behavior is simple and firm. I'm not going to continue this conversation like this. These words are powerful because they refuse to let another person decide the conditions under which you must communicate. Many people remain in destructive arguments because they believe walking away means losing. They fear that leaving the conversation will make them appear weak, guilty, or unable to defend themselves. But not every withdrawal is defeat. Sometimes staying is the real trap. A toxic person may repeat the same accusation for hours, interrupt every explanation, twist your words, or move from one complaint to another without ever seeking a solution. At that point, the conversation is no longer about understanding. It has become an emotional battlefield designed to exhaust you. The intelligent person recognizes the difference between conflict and chaos. Healthy conflict has a purpose. Two people may disagree strongly while still listening, allowing each other to speak, and searching for a solution. Toxic drama is different. Its purpose is often victory, humiliation, control, or emotional release. There is no real finish line because the toxic person does not want resolution. They want continued access to your attention and emotions. When you say, "I'm not going to continue this conversation like this," you are establishing a condition. You are not necessarily refusing to discuss the issue. You are refusing to discuss it under abusive, manipulative, or chaotic conditions. This distinction matters. You can be open to communication while rejecting disrespect. You can be willing to solve a problem while refusing to be shouted at. You can listen without allowing someone to use your patience as a doorway to mistreat you. Once you set this boundary, your actions must support your words. A toxic person may immediately try to pull you back. They may insult you more intensely, accuse you of running away, or suddenly become emotional to make you feel guilty. This is often a test. If you return every time they increase the pressure, they learn that your boundary is only a suggestion. Real boundaries are not established by long explanations. They are established through consistency. Leave the conversation calmly if necessary. Do not slam doors, make dramatic threats, or try to deliver the final insult. The goal is not to create a more impressive scene. The goal is to protect your ability to think. Silence can be more effective than 100 clever arguments when the other person is committed to misunderstanding you. Your attention is one of your most valuable resources. Every argument costs time, emotional energy, and mental clarity. Do not spend these resources proving yourself to someone who has already decided not to understand. The strongest people are not those who respond to every attack. They are those who know when a conversation has stopped being useful. Refusing chaos is not weakness. It is the discipline of protecting your mind from people who benefit when you lose control. Guilt is one of the most effective tools of manipulation because it does not always arrive looking like control. Sometimes it arrives as disappointment. Sometimes it sounds like sadness, sacrifice, or a simple sentence such as, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me." A toxic person understands that if they cannot force you to do something directly, they may be able to make you feel guilty enough to do it willingly. This is why one of the smartest responses is calm, respectful, and firm. "I'm sorry you feel that way, but my decision remains the same." These words separate compassion from surrender. They allow you to acknowledge another person's feelings without allowing those feelings to control your choices. Many people have been taught that saying no requires a long explanation. They believe they must provide enough reasons to make the other person understand, agree, and finally approve of their decision. But toxic people often treat explanations as openings for negotiation. The more you explain, the more opportunities they have to attack your reasoning. If you say you are busy, they may question your priorities. If you say you are tired, they may tell you that you would make time if you truly cared. If you give one reason, they will search for a way around it. Eventually, you may discover that the problem was never your explanation. The problem was their refusal to respect your answer. A boundary does not become valid only when another person agrees with it. This is an important lesson because guilt manipulation often depends on making you believe that someone else's disappointment is proof that you have done something wrong. But people can be unhappy with your decision even when your decision is completely reasonable. They can feel rejected when you are simply protecting your time. They can feel disappointed when you choose your own priorities. Their emotions are real, but their emotions are not automatically your responsibility to fix. When you say, "I'm sorry you feel that way, but my decision remains the same," you are showing emotional maturity. You are not mocking their feelings or pretending they do not exist. You are simply refusing to confuse empathy with obedience. You can care about someone without giving them everything they demand. You can understand their frustration without changing your answer. You can love someone and still maintain a boundary. The inability to separate these things is what often traps good people in unhealthy relationships. Toxic individuals may increase the pressure when guilt does not work immediately. They may remind you of past favors, exaggerate their sacrifices, accuse you of being selfish, or compare you to someone more obedient. Do not allow a favor to become a permanent debt unless that was the agreement from the beginning. Genuine kindness is not supposed to create invisible chains. When someone repeatedly uses what they have done for you as a weapon, they may not be giving freely. They may be investing in future control. The key is consistency. If you say no and then change your mind every time the other person becomes upset, you teach them that emotional pressure works. They will learn exactly how much guilt, anger, or sadness is required to make you surrender. But when your answer remains calm and consistent, the manipulation loses its reward. You do not need to become cold or cruel. You simply need to stop negotiating against yourself. This response is especially powerful because it protects both your dignity and your humanity. You do not have to attack the other person to defend your boundary. You do not have to become emotionally distant to become strong. Real strength is being able to remain kind without becoming available for exploitation. A calm no is still a no. A respectful boundary is still a boundary. Your compassion should be something you choose to give, not something another person can use as a key to control you. Remember that guilt is useful when it points toward a genuine mistake and encourages you to correct it. But false guilt is a prison built from other people's expectations. Learn to recognize the difference. Ask yourself whether you have truly done something wrong or whether someone simply dislikes your decision. Those are not the same thing. Once you understand this, you stop confusing another person's discomfort with your obligation. You are allowed to make decisions that protect your time, your energy, and your peace. You are allowed to disappoint people without becoming a bad person. And when someone tries to control you through guilt, respond with calm certainty, because the moment you can feel compassion without surrendering your boundaries, you become far more difficult to manipulate. The final and perhaps most powerful response to a toxic person is not always a sentence. Sometimes the strongest answer is silence. Sometimes it is distance. Sometimes it is the quiet decision to stop giving someone access to your time, your emotions, and your inner world. Toxic people often believe that every problem can be solved through another argument, another explanation, another emotional confrontation. But there comes a point when words no longer create understanding. They simply create more material for manipulation. At that point, silence becomes strategy. Many people struggle with this because they want closure. They want to explain exactly why they are hurt. They want the toxic person to finally understand what they did wrong. They want an apology that proves their pain was real. But some people are not confused about the damage they cause. They understand enough. They simply benefit from refusing to change. Waiting for such a person to suddenly develop the empathy you have been asking for can keep you trapped for years. You must learn the difficult difference between someone who is willing to grow and someone who only wants you to continue tolerating them. Silence does not mean you have nothing to say. It means you have decided that saying more will not improve the situation. Distance does not always mean hatred. It can mean clarity. You can care about someone and still recognize that their presence repeatedly creates chaos in your life. You can forgive someone internally without inviting them back into the same position where they hurt you. Forgiveness and access are not the same thing. Understanding someone's reasons does not require you to accept their behavior. One of the greatest mistakes people make with toxic individuals is giving too much information. They explain every feeling, every plan, every weakness, and every boundary in the hope of being understood. But a manipulative person may treat information as intelligence. They remember your fears and use them during arguments. They learn your insecurities and touch them at the perfect moment. They study your explanations and search for contradictions. This does not mean you must become secretive with everyone. It means trust should be earned. Access to your inner world should be a privilege, not something automatically given to anyone who demands it. When a toxic person repeatedly crosses your boundaries, watch what happens after you communicate clearly. Words matter, but patterns matter more. A sincere person may make mistakes and still try to improve. A manipulative person may apologize beautifully and then repeat the same behavior once they believe you have forgiven them. Do not judge change by promises alone. Watch consistency. Real change requires different behavior over time. Repeated apologies without changed actions are often simply another method of keeping you in the same cycle. This is where distance becomes powerful. You do not need to announce every step you take. You do not need to deliver a dramatic final speech designed to make them regret losing you. In many situations, the healthiest response is to quietly reduce access. Reply less when necessary, share less. Stop discussing personal matters with someone who repeatedly weaponizes them. Limit contact where possible and appropriate. If the relationship requires complete separation for your safety or well-being, seek support from trusted people and take the steps you need. Your peace does not require a public explanation. The toxic person may react strongly when they feel their access disappearing. They may suddenly become kinder. They may promise transformation. They may accuse you of becoming cold, selfish, or disloyal. Remember that boundaries often feel like punishment to people who benefited from having none. Their anger at your distance does not automatically mean your distance is wrong. Sometimes it simply means the old method of controlling you is no longer working. Consistency is the final piece. A boundary that disappears whenever someone applies enough pressure is not a boundary, it is a temporary request. You do not need to repeat yourself endlessly. State what you will accept, decide what you will no longer accept, and allow your actions to support your words. This may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you are used to rescuing relationships at the expense of yourself. But discomfort is not always a sign that you are doing something wrong. Sometimes it is the feeling of breaking an old pattern. Silence, distance, and consistency are powerful because they remove the fuel toxic people often depend upon, your constant emotional participation. You stop defending yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you. You stop chasing apologies from someone unwilling to change. You stop giving endless chances without evidence of growth. You become more selective about who receives your attention, your trust, and your energy. The goal is not to become heartless. The goal is to become wise. Protecting yourself does not require becoming cruel. You can remain calm, respectful, and compassionate while refusing to remain available for repeated manipulation. The strongest response is often not making the toxic person understand your decision. It is becoming secure enough that their understanding is no longer required.